I think we're good to go, Lloyd. If you are ready to kick off today's session.
Sure. Well, want to welcome everyone from all around the world, it appears, based on some of the names that I'm seeing. We're in the ninth session of the Community of Practice webinar series. This one will be for DCW, Digital Construction Works. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of information on the Community of Practice before we kick off the webinar. So let me talk about the vision of the Advanced Work Packaging Community of Practice. This group is dedicated to creating safer, more productive, value creating project delivery through better design, procurement, execution, commissioning, and startup. And while we started up with one group, the Community of Practice, I'm very excited to announce that we're going to be launching a chapter in South America, probably this month. There's another chapter in the Middle East and Africa that should be kicking off fairly soon. And then there's a third chapter that will be in Europe that should be kicking off in about a month as well. So it's very exciting times, lots of interest in this particular topic area. Our mission is really about creating a community that's going to share knowledge, encourage discussion about advanced work packaging and other construction-related initiatives. One of the things that I will say is that we are very closely allied with CII and COA. So the advanced work packaging body of knowledge and the initiatives that are coming out of there, the Community of Business Advancement for Advanced Work Packaging, are all groups that we strongly support and recommend that you check into. Next, I want to talk about something that's coming up. We've got two conferences coming up. One of them is in London, and it's on the 13th and 14th of October. And the other one is in Houston, and it's on the 27th and 28th. Both of these events will be both physical and there will be a virtual component. So we're going to be giving you the opportunity to participate in these events no matter where you are in the world. And we're going to have more information coming out on that in the next little while. Also, I'm excited to announce that CII is going to be reporting out on their AWP research. And that'll be happening in August, and there will be some information coming up on that in the near future as well. So at this point, I'd like to just hand it over to Eric Crivella to introduce this session.
Excellent. Thanks, Lloyd. All right. Let's get into it for today. All right. So in terms of introductions, and a bit of an agenda here, Eric Crivella with Digital Construction Works. I'll talk about that in a second here. Give you a little bit of an agenda in terms of on the safety side of it. Talk a little bit about an overview of Digital Construction Works. Talk about our work with AWP 4D, 5D in the digital twins, and a quick overview of our solution, and then hand it over to my colleague Abdelghani Sinno, who will go through some workflows, AWP workflows, and then we'll jump into a couple case studies, and hopefully we leave a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. In terms of a quick introduction on myself, Eric Crivella. I've been doing advanced work packaging and WorkFace planning for years. Started a company with a good friend of mine several years ago, back in 1998. Grew it up. We sold it off to Bentley Systems in 2008. And last year, spun off from Bentley Systems into this Digital Construction Works. I'm also the chair, along with Jamie Gerbrecht, one of the co-chairs of the CII Community of Business Advancement. So I'm a big proponent of advanced work packaging and field productivity improvement, been at it for years, and transitioned over to DCW, in which we'll give you kind of an overview of that coming up now. So in terms of a safety topic here, you know, recently there's a really good article that came out from McKinsey about how construction can emerge from the coronavirus stronger, right? And how there's going to be a need for investment in the digital technologies and the digitization and the use of offsite building construction, sustainable building materials, really ramping up the use of technology and digital technology in construction. It just makes sense. With the COVID, you can see on a daily basis, there's tracking and analytics and dashboards. People now get it, right? People understand the digital, and now there's a real means and a need for it. So in terms of long and short-term trends, right? McKinsey is really saying, hey, you know, in the short term, increased digitization. You know, we're going to have to shift. We're shifting, and they're starting to see a lot more of this in terms of 4D, 5D, integrated digital twin solutions, right? And then the ability to monitor and work with your employees and their well-being and monitor that and make sure that they're staying safe. So some of the really interesting technologies that have been out there recently in relation to COVID, in you know, in technologies that were there, but have really kind of the tip of the spear in terms of where things are at in terms of COVID and helping get back to work. You know, in terms of a safety topic here, you have McKinsey saying, hey, we're going digital. You have to go digital. You have to get used to the new normal. But then there's some cool technologies out there that have really come about and are quickly being adopted in relation to COVID. And one of those is looking at it from the schedule simulations and a 4D simulation, but from a people perspective. You can only imagine every college campus out there and every large building is having to figure out, okay, can I simulate and figure out what's safe? How many people can I have in here at any given time? What's the safest way to bring people in and get them out of our job sites? So this is a simulation tool that Bentley Systems has called Legion that does the people moving, which is just really amazing in terms of combining this and looking at it from a social distancing perspective and trying to simulate the situation in which how many people can I have in the stadium and safely get in and out as part of these COVID times. Another really interesting technology that we're hearing about being deployed and starting to see put up there is companies like DTech Technologies and our friend Josh Canner at smartbid.io. They have video AI video platforms essentially that are able to, you know, basically tell and take live camera feeds and do the analysis of it and use AI in order to, hey, how well are you doing in terms of social distancing? Are folks wearing the PPE? Are they wearing the masks? Are they wearing the right type of masks, right? Are there people in areas where there shouldn't be? And then thermal scanning and going through the check-in and check-out requirements to get on into and out of a site. So really interesting technologies are starting to be used along these lines with COVID. And another one that's you know, seemingly come about pretty quick and is the use of kind of the remote expert type of technologies. This is an example from RealWear in terms of being able to have intrinsically safe industrial wearables, right? So basically a tablet computer that you can plug into your head-mounted display, and that head-mounted display projects a 7-inch tablet basically, and it has a two-way video. And so remote inspections and task workflows being possible and augmented by this wearable technology is really, it's really kind of interesting how this is coming about. And this, I believe, can make quite a difference. One of our labs is doing some work along these lines and some neat stuff along these lines in terms of folks are now taking a look at this wearable technology and seeing, can we do more with less? You know, putting less people on site and having people have a two-way video monitor and allowing the SMEs to guide people on site and do the work remotely or assist them in doing the work. So really cool construction technologies have kind of come about from a safety perspective coming out of COVID. So quick safety minute along those lines. Quick overview in terms of digital construction works, right? So we're all about driving digital transformation in construction, right? We're a services organization. You know, we're really, we're here to do automation, integration, digital twinning services, and to optimize the construction processes from a life cycle perspective. Right? We're on a mission, and I've been on a mission for many years, but we're on a mission to actually to transform the construction industry and, you know, get the capital efficiencies, improve our capital projects, and then simultaneously develop a digital twin. So a little bit more about digital construction works, right? This is a Bentley Systems and Topcon Positioning joint venture, right? So there's about 40 people. And we say it's a startup, but it's really more of a joint venture, right? So we're bringing together two teams of people in order to really accelerate digital transformation in construction. And as a digital accelerator, digital integrator, we have some labs. We have a solutions integration lab, we have a digital twin lab, and we have 2 field labs in order to really carry out what's the integration look like, what's that feedback mechanism look like coming from our digital twinning efforts, and then showing that in our field-based labs, right? And the idea behind digital construction works is that, you know, okay, yes, we're owned by Topcon, we're owned by Bentley, but it's really, how do you provide a fit for purpose, a best for breed, a tool agnostic type of technologies? So there's a recognition from the parent companies that, you know, look, if you go to do integration, it's not just going to be from a Bentley platform or a Topcon platform. You're going to have to play nice with other vendors out there and integrate their solutions together to get to an outcome, right? So DCW was really set up with that in mind, to look at it from a fit for purpose, a best of breed. And then to do that on an open architecture, an open platform, in this case, Bentley's iModel.js, and taking advantage of the iTwin services. You know, how do you bring this together into an open source platform? And then bring together a community of third-party partners, SMEs, et cetera, to deliver successful outcomes. And really the kind of the focus here, and what a core concept here, is that we believe that if you combine the 4D, 5D with the advanced work packaging, and you set it up with the continuous survey, the reality capture, the reality modeling, that you can get to a digital twin, right? You can not only improve field productivity during the project and bridge that gap between engineering and procurement and fabrication to construction into commissioning, but simultaneously you can create a digital twin during construction that can be used for a variety of purposes. So, you know, it's really, it boils down to people, the processes, the systems, but those all have to be aligned around an outcomes-based model, right? People, process, and systems, but how do you get to an outcome? How do we measure that? How do we get to the point where we can have these measurable outcomes? So DCW provides end-to-end digital integration services and technology solutions for construction, right? The 4D, 5D plan versus the actual versus the as-is conditions, right? Being able to show the schedule simulations. The 5D means something slightly different in the industrial world as it does the commercial world. So in the commercial side of it, it's more all about cost and quantities. 5D in the industrial segment. To some folks, it really means linking it in with the material side of it and linking it in with other resources for the status visualization aspects of it. In any event, you're covering both of those. And we're offering services along those lines. And then with the advanced work packaging, it's really looking at it from an integration platform and from a programmatic approach to AWP. So, linking together the various project IT systems to deliver the outcome in terms of being able to manage work packages throughout the life cycle, right? Including linking it in with work package management, the field mobility, field-based progressing, integrating it in with the materials management, the on-site track and trace, and then linking that in with completions, commissioning, and startup, and offering more of a holistic solution. It's not just the technology, but it's the deliverables, it's the contracts, it's the training and the education that really get you to the point of having successful outcomes, as well as linking it in with the feedback and doing the digital twinning, right? Creating a virtual representation of the physical asset as you go along, but then being able to take advantage of that and use augmented reality, sensors, drones, the Internet of Things, and robotics, and bring that all together in terms of the real meal-time feedback mechanism in order to make the construction processes and the digital workflows much, much more efficient, to make them a closed loop system, if you will. Right? And so we also offer visualization and analysis and continuous survey type of services along these lines in order to really drive things to getting to a point where you have that plan versus the actual versus the as is, and being able to show that and keep that evergreen and up to date. So on the what we're really talking about in the digital twin world is, okay, here we have the virtual construction model, and we're taking that virtual construction model, and as we're building the physical plant or physical asset, we're getting feedback, right? We're taking plans, right? We're getting feedback from the field and putting that back into the digital twin, into the virtual construction model, in order to take that survey, get the information, get the as-built, as-is conditions, plug that in, and then start doing our planning, right? And then allow us to do the planning, the simulation, the schedule it out, and then essentially develop your various work packages, path of construction, sequence those out, and keep that evergreen, up to date at the component work step task level, right? And then as you're progressing this, you're moving that through the process, and you're essentially getting feedback in terms of where you're at on the progress, and updating that to the point where you can, okay, I'm using Synchro to do the planning there. I'm using the best of breed technologies, and I'm out there at the field and I'm plugging this into various sensors, and I'm collecting the as-is conditions in order to get a feedback mechanism going back in, so I have real-time updates as to where I'm at, and actually supporting construction verification. So I know exactly where I'm at any given time, but I'm doing that within a virtual construction model and keeping that up to date. And how you getting there? Well, you're using various sensors and modeling, right? So on the left here, we have a variety of different sensors, starting at the bottom where you have just phones and cameras, right? And then you have UAVs, and you have drones, mobile mapping, total robotic stations, laser scanners, to varying degrees of sophistication, and then the software that does the processing and the modeling thereafter, right? So on the bottom, you might not need at every time, down to a 3 millimeter or 2 millimeter accuracy in order to effectively capture the as-is conditions along those lines, right? So photogrammetry, using things like context capture and developing the reality models. And then as you get further detailed and speed-wise in the level of detail in terms of the dimensional control, being able to take that up the food chain all the way up to laser scanning and getting down to discrete points and being able to have high degrees of accuracy, the 1 to 2, 3 millimeters versus we're a couple centimeters, right? So it depends on your application, but the key here is to be able to link in the as-is conditions and to get that feedback mechanism as quickly as possible back into that in order to manage your effort and have the feedback from the field in terms of where you're at from a construction verification perspective. This is how it really lends itself to the next generation of where things are going to go from a, not only linking it together from an AWP schedule simulation in the model basis, but then how do you link this into the contracts as well and verifying that the work has been done, right? So this is a really important aspect as we go along in terms of capturing the as-is conditions and linking that up with the virtual construction model. The ultimate goal is to get the integrated project delivery and collaboration using a virtual construction model and keeping that evergreen. I like to use this particular screenshot because it really represents, okay, let's have an evergreen model and keep it up to date in terms of exactly where we're at on the project, who's going to do what. You come in the morning discipline lead meetings, you're going to go open up these work fronts, you're going to go walk down these, you're going to go inspect these ones and keep it up to date, right? So I believe that integrated project delivery for the past several years has largely been contractual in nature, right? So it's more a contracting model. So in integrated project delivery in the industrial segment really is about collaboration related to the model and keeping that model up to date, the virtual construction model or the virtual design construction model. Keeping that up to date and everybody being able to add to that and do that week over week change management to keep that evergreen so you know exactly where you're at on the project and what's left to go, and that you're able to essentially drive a degree of predictability and schedule and cost certainty onto your projects. Really big deal, really big deal. You know, DCW, really what we're about is providing integrated and connected data environments, right? So throughout the life cycle. So how do you take advantage of the AWP data requirements and the digital threads? Creating the path of construction, using the 4D, 5D, creating the work packages, managing those work packages, linking it in with constraint management, linking it in with integrated materials management, what's been procured versus what's arrived on site, and the track and trace, and the field mobility in terms of field-based progressing and connecting the dots there, and then setting up a continuous surveying process where you're capturing the reality, you're doing construction modeling, and then linking that in with the completions and the commissioning, doing that throughout the whole life cycle, and that kind of the workflow that you see in the middle here, the path of construction, boundaries. This is really what we're all about in terms of how do we take advantage of this, the AWP and the reality capture and modeling to get the measurable project outcomes. And then simultaneously and purposefully, how do we also deliver a digital twin during construction that can be used for operator training, procedures, and being able to validate that the facility has been handed over properly in a continuous handover type of methodology. So, yeah, going back to CII related content, really it's revolutionary. And information-rich modeling is revolutionary. So the RT 324 that was a couple years ago now, right? The future construction needs of virtual design models was a couple years ago, but they even said then, okay, here we have the models, and then we have the plan versus the actual versus the as is, and combining and integrating the real with the virtual. Really big deal. And this is exactly where we're at in terms of that DCW is plan versus actual versus as is, but keeping that in a smart model going forward, right? And one of the punchlines coming out of the research team 324 was that, hey, knowledge is power, right? You can do things once, you can maintain that asset throughout its life cycle. You can increase productivity during construction, but the ultimate power is having this integrated model. And our friends at General Motors estimated on average that they could save 3 to 5% of total construction costs by using an integrated model. And so that's where we're at. We're chasing that and we're making that into reality. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and hand this over to my colleague, Abdelghani Sinno. And as he's prepping there, I'm going to allow him to grab the screen share. Abdel has been with me for several years. He came from CCC. He's been on 20+ projects over the past several, I don't know, 10 years or so. And just one of the best technical people in terms of on the implementing AWP on your projects that I have ever met. Abdel, I'll let you give yourself a better introduction, but that's my take on it.
Thank you, Eric. I'm flattered. Hi, everyone. Abdelghani Sinno, Senior Construction Consultant. As Eric mentioned, I'm the guy who goes to the project, does the implementation, and the past 10 years, I was able to listen to the user at site to see, where are the bottlenecks, how can we make our process more efficient. So when it comes to implementing AWP, we would like to make that process more productive by using, the tools that we have in the market. And as Eric mentioned, any tool. So whatever tool makes the best out of, that workflow that you're seeing here, we provide the integration. We make sure that that implementation at the project site is as efficient as possible. Now, at DCW, we provide a holistic solution when it comes to the AWP implementation. So that's a high-level AWP workflow that you can see here on the screen. However, in today's session, I'm going to focus solely on the issuing or creating the IWPs. So once you have set the boundaries of your EWPs and CWPs and you start extracting and creating your IWPs, how are you able to manage those IWPs? So one of the things that I've noticed in many of the construction sites is that we do have a good way to create the IWPs, to have an understanding of the scope, what material are required, the documents, even automating the calculation of the total man hours of the IWP based on the best practice, and then maybe linking them with the constraints. But once we have created all those IWPs, how are we managing them at the schedule level? This is something that up till today, my understanding and from what I've seen so far, is mostly done by the WorkFace planner in a manual fashion. So how can we automate that process? And the reason why is from many of the projects that I've attended, the number of IWPs is increasing exponentially. Now, one of the reasons that the number of IWPs is increasing, which is something great, by the way, because in that sense, we are applying the best practice when it comes to dividing your scope of work into the weekly packages. Now, in the early days, that scope of work was mainly targeting the complex activities such as piping, steel, and so on. But now that many people or many organizations are on board with the AWP implementation, they are taking it to the next level by making sure that all the disciplines within the project are actually we creating for them IWPs and CWPs, because if you really want to follow the best practice, you can't target specific disciplines, because AWP, if you really want to implement it, it goes from the underground piping to the civil part up until you start, the C structure and other disciplines. So if you miss that point, you might lose some of the potential benefits that you might get if you are applying it for all the disciplines. And now that many projects are actually implementing, the AWP for all disciplines, I've seen the number of IWPs increasing. And to give you some examples, in one of the projects in Oman, that number went up to 10,000 IWPs, and that number is definitely for the whole scope of the project. And in one of the projects that we are currently supporting here in Baytown in Texas, the projected number of IWPs is 50,000. So it's not bad. It's not something bad, again, because simply we're applying the best practice. You're dividing the project into the weekly packages for all disciplines, and this is the way that you would like it to be. But how are we able to manage all these IWPs? Now, some projects went and increasing the number of WorkFace planners. So in that project, the Baytown that is projected to have 50,000 IWPs, they have around 25 WorkFace planners. Imagine, that's a huge number. Even if this is medium to mega project, now a 25 WorkFace planners would be needed if the way that you are managing your IWPs after creating them is done mostly manually. But if you're taking advantage of some of the integration between the tools that create the IWPs and other tools that can schedule those IWPs, and this is something that we have recently worked on, and it proved that it actually works. So would you need 25 WorkFace planners in this sense? Definitely not. So, but by making sure that you can automate these processes, you will be able to reduce the number of WorkFace planner at the job site, increase the benefits of the creation of the IWPs. Because in the example that I will be showing you next, it's great that you are able to divide your project into those weekly packages, but who's really validating the sequence of these packages, how they are actually going to be executed? At the project, at the level 3, schedule level, we have the CWPs, we have a well identified sequence between the CWPs. But when it comes to the IWPs, and when you have thousands and thousands of packages created, who's really following up on the correct and the right sequence between the IWPs? Who's really following up on the equipment requirement, on the cranes and their accessibility? And what happens when one of the IWPs gets delayed? What's the impact of the subsequent IWPs? So we might have that thing manually done, or putting the IWPs in Primavera and using the scheduling tools, but up until you are actually able to visualize those IWPs and validate that sequence visually, is where you are really going to get the benefits. So what I'll be showing next is how are we automating that process. So in the sense, how are we able to provide an IWP, an automated IWP schedule? So this is what I'll be showing next. This is one of the plans that we typically use for our demo purposes. So, at a very high level, we've divided the project into the CWAs, and then which are multidisciplinary, and then we've identified the CWPs per discipline. And then the project team at site, with the help of the WorkFace planner superintendent, they will start dividing those CWPs into the individual weekly packages for the superintendent to execute them, hopefully constraint free, and so on. Now, there are many tools that provide this capability of generating and creating those individual IWPs and they provide the information related to the material required, the documents required, the scope, the MTO, and the task list along the total man hours. So there are many tools that does that. One of them is CSIM, the tool that I'm showing here. I'm pretty sure many of you know they are familiar with this application. So, but then, and you can see that this is a piping IWP with around 600 man hours, 151 tasks. This example, as I've been saying, that recently we have so many organizations, contractors that are expanding the scope of the creation of IWPs to include the foundations, the duct banks, and so on. So again, you have the capability of creating that IWP and providing the tool after doing the necessary and the required configurations. It will provide the task list along the total man hour. But what next? So I've divided my project into those individual IWPs. Shall I simply transfer those IWPs that I have created to P6, and then the WorkFace planner or the planner or the schedule have to individually plan the start date and end date of each single IWP along the sequence that he wouldn't be able to see it in P6. So when that number, so that's how in CSIM, for instance, you would have, once you created the IWPs, you have a list of like a spreadsheet of all the IWPs that have been created, but with no validation of the sequence. And there is a automated process to schedule those IWPs. The WorkFace planner he has to manually go to each IWP and set the start date and end date. And when an particular IWP gets delayed, then he will have to go over the 100 or the thousands IWPs and see the impact on the those IWPs that are in sequence or has some prerequisites. So what we did the past period is we took advantage of those applications that generate the IWPs along all the man hours, the requirements, and then we said, why not integrating, that tool, whether CSIM or any other tool that generates those IWPs, with a scheduling tool where it gives the mechanism or the method to automate the process of sequencing the IWPs along the calculation of the start and end date of those thousands of IWPs. So what I'll be doing next is I'm gonna show you how simple is this to be done, with the integration that we have implemented the past period, and how efficient it will be for the WorkFace planner to validate that sequence and to manage the IWPs that he has been creating. So from that, so as an interface for the end user or for the WorkFace planner, he would go from, once he created the IWPs, from that interface to this interface where he would have the IWPs in the schedule integrated. So you can see here I have the CWP, the breakdown of the IWPs that have been transferred, but most importantly, not only the data in terms of the IWP along its man hours is now available in the schedule tool, but most importantly, the connection with the graphics. So when I select one IWP in my scheduling tool, I'm able actually to see it in action when I'm scheduling it or setting the sequence. So now you have that list of IWPs, and I'll be explaining next how the how the IWP schedule is automatically generated, and it's based on these, I wouldn't say formulas, but these concepts. So how are we calculating first the duration of the IWP? Because this is one of the factors that would be required to automatically generate the start date and end date of the IWPs. So again, we're talking about thousands and thousands of IWPs. So we can see the benefit from generating all of that in one click. of a button. The total man hours of the IWP is brought from CSIM or from any other tool that is actually generating the total man hours of each package. Now, once you have the total man hours, let's say 500, 600 man hours that are specific to that IWP, and based on the crew size, that it's one of the parameters that is set in the application, and based on the project calendar. So, like in P6, you set the holidays, how many hours you work per day, is the weekend, is Saturday, Sunday. So based on these three parameters, so the total man hours of the IWP, the crew size, and the project calendar, the duration of IWP is automatically calculated. And once you have the duration of the IWP calculated, this will basically help in deducing the start date and end date of the IWP. How this is done? It's basically, if this is the very first IWP within that will start within that CWP. So, we've broken down the CWP into those individual IWPs. If that IWP is the first IWP in that sequence, then it's typically, the start date will be deduced from the CWP for that particular IWP. Otherwise, the end date, otherwise it will be the end date of the previous IWP based on the sequence set. So I'll be showing that in the demo shortly. So this is how we deduce the start date, and the end date is nothing but the start date that have been set here plus the duration that has been already calculated. So this is how we're automatically generating the IWP schedule based on these calculations, and which will make the number of workface planners required on the job, which will make the validations that needs to be done rather than having the human factor. It will be done by the system itself. Now, there are other advantages. I'll be also touching on that, which is related to what happens when things get delayed. What's the impact on some of the IWPs? What are the how many days are they going to be delayed? Am I going to do that also manually? No. Also, that can be provided as a parameter or as an output from the application. So let me go over, again, I'm using here Synchro. It can be another tool that we could integrate with to provide those same sort of analysis and integrations. So we've taken from CSIM the IWPs, and initially the scope of, or the level of in the schedule was at the level 3 schedule, which is the CWP level, and then we were able to build or to transfer from CSIM to Synchro the IWPs. Now, some of the P6 schedules, they are actually including the IWPs. In that case, we would simply transfer the geometry. So rather than having a 2D view of, not even 2D, rather than just having the Gantt chart and the records of those IWPs without even being able to visualize them, we would simply take that schedule that contains the IWP and make sure that all the graphical components that have been generated from the packaging tool are transferred visually, so that along their total man hours and so on and so forth. So you can see here as a start, now that I've brought all the packages for that particular CWP from CSIM, and this is for the foundations, this is for the structural steel, for the equipment, and so on and so forth. Now, you can see that by default, it inherits the start date of the CWP, because I still didn't set any sequence. So based on the duration that have been calculated, and I've showed how we are doing that calculation. And you can see here that this is the start date and this is the finish date deduced from the CWP level. And by the way, one of the advantages is actually to validate the schedule, because initially you have the level 3 schedule, and then you're actually doing it at the weekly level analysis with the IWP along their man hours. So when you calculate the duration, you actually also, you are validating the schedule, because now you could tell if the total duration of the IWP in that sequence will actually be correct based on the level 3 that has been set. Now, when I drag the focus time, you can see that those are the IWPs, and all of them are starting at the same time because simply they have the start date of the CWP. Now, if I want to set a sequence between those packages, now this is an example of a civil. It can be civil and structural or piping. So sometimes there might be an interdependency that I should finish first the foundation before being able to do the steel. So let's say in that case, I do have only one crew to work at a time. So this takes 7 days. So I only have one crew. I can't ask the crew to finish all the IWPs at the same time because one crew only will be assigned to that. So I can simply come here and say sequence those IWPs, and I can set the finish to start, start to finish, and then I can reschedule all the IWPs along. So I can reschedule all the IWPs with the, one second. So I'll set first the sequence as finish to start. So now I have the sequence, and then I can either reschedule the whole project if I want to see the impact on the other disciplines, or I can sequence only the IWPs related to the foundations IWP. For now, I'll reschedule the whole project. Now you can see that the IWPs now are set finish to start, and then when I drag the focus time, you can see that each IWP now is starting in sequence, and you can see that even the steel packages also automatically where the start and finish dates were changed based on the start date and finish date of those IWPs. So the WorkFace Planner didn't even have to worry about setting the start date and finish date of the subsequent IWPs. One last thing I want to demo, because I know we are short on time, is which is I really like about the tool, is the impact on the subsequent IWPs when things get delayed. So for instance, let me select that IWP, and it was initially supposed to finish on the 31st of October. So let's say that this is done, and it started on the 13th of October, or it started as it was planned, so 23rd, but it finished on the, so October, November, so it was supposed to finish on the 31st. Let's say it got delayed by 6 days. So you see that IWP now got delayed. So what happens next? So how can I check the impact on the subsequent IWP? So I will simply reschedule to see, you see now that IWP was moved, and I do have a report will get generated that shows what IWPs were impacted. So you see that all these IWPs were impacted by 3 days. This IWP was impacted by 7 days. So imagine and plus I can validate that through the 4D analysis. It can be done as planned versus actual once this happens. So I'm doing now the analysis at the IWP level based on that delay. So you can see at the top level, if this is the IWP, how it was actually planned to be, or basically how it was executed, and the bottom part is the how the IWP was planned to be executed. One last point I want to also touch on is the cost element. We have been asked now in many of our engagements is, are you able to provide also the cost element factor when it comes to the IWPs? And since we are bringing from CSIM or any other tool the total man hours, the material takeoff, we are able also to provide the cost element. So for instance, for this particular foundation, we have the total quantity that has been brought from CSIM, and you have the cost per unit, and then you'll be able to calculate the total cost of that particular IWP. So the integration also with the cost estimate and the budget can also is something that also can be done. We can provide the S-curve for that as well. So you can see here the EVA graph, even for the earned value in terms of the cost element. Back to you, Eric.
Okay. Well, we have, if you want to switch back.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if you still want to show the use cases. If we have questions, I prefer to go over the questions.
Okay, let's pull up the questions in the chat then.
So what's the dollar value on a, okay, so I mean, when it comes to how much this costs, we can have a separate session, and Eric will be more than happy to talk about that. How many WorkFace planner the profile might be as superintendent? I mean, train on AWP approach as well as, okay. So Sabrine, yeah, great question. Actually, for the WorkFace planner to be, when he is assigned to a job, one of the requirements is actually to be a previous superintendent, because he needs to know how the work is executed, because he is the person, the WorkFace planner, he is the person ultimately who is going to be creating those IWPs. Definitely he will get support from the construction manager, the superintendent, but he has to have a knowledge or the experience as a superintendent. No, it can be reduced to quantity surveyor. The quantity or the people from the quantity surveyor needs to be included, but no, that's beyond their scope. Yes, this tool is connected to Primavera and 3D. Yes, it is. So we can provide, there is an API where you can import from P6 and you can export to P6. Is the expectation that the contractor buy a seat of IWP management tool and be able to import and export data? Does it have to work with only ConstructSim? So it can be provided as a service that we can do it for the contractor, because we've seen many times where they see it as a burden, or you know, they need to have a dedicated resource for that. So some of them, they prefer us to do it on their behalf. Some of them, they would like to be trained, and we provide both models. We're good with both models. And have to work only with ConstructSim? No. So at DCW, we are product agnostic, meaning that we are ready to work with any type of tool. The great thing about our organization is that we have 3 labs, and those labs are mainly focused on providing those types of integration. So if you think that you're working on another tool, we'll be more happy than providing, you know, that service. But one thing to note, from our experience, we check what are the best tools in the market to provide that implementation, specifically for the IWP sequencing. And what I've showed here, I think Synchro currently is the best tool in the market that can provide this level of visibility. How are you differentiating a VCM as a digital twin? So it's basically as much as you can augment the VCM and load it with more data, as much as you will be close to a digital twin. Now, the virtual construction model, initially we were simply, you know, integrating it with the material management system, procurement management system, the document management system. But as much as you can integrate with the you know, the sensors and the model that gets generated, let's say, from the context capture. So when you provide all the other parameters that currently the VCM miss, that, you know, at this stage we don't provide all the integration with all the other applications, then you would reach the digital twin.
The difference really from a VCM versus a digital twin is that fast feedback loop, the field-based progressing, the construction verification, the sensors, bringing that back into it and keeping it evergreen, and having the continuous survey where you're flying the drone or you're getting out there and you're doing the surveying and adding that back in, the as-is conditions back into the virtual construction.
The other question from Sabrine, yes, we do have an integration with the system completion. So we do identify once the IWP is completed, we identify for that particular system, what are the IWPs involved and the progress of these IWPs to identify if the system is ready to be commissioned or tested. Is the solution cloud-based? Yes. So the solution is cloud-based, and whether we're talking about CSIM or Synchro, both are cloud-based applications.
Just a quick point. There were a few questions that came in through the chat, not just through Q&A. So,
okay. So as soon as I finish them, I will go to the chat window. Thank you, Lloyd, for bringing this up. What value does Synchro bring that ConstructSim does not provide, and what value does bring ConstructSim that Synchro does not? Okay, so it's, the CSIM is great at creating the IWPs. So you can see that when you would like to break down your project into CWPs and IWPs, this is what CSIM does best. So you can see here all the IWPs that gets generated, and it automates that process by bringing all the required documents, all the required material takeoff. It provides all the data required, so for that IWP to be handed over to the site. But you see, once I have created thousands of packages, it's not a great tool to provide the best or the optimized schedule for these packages and to validate the sequence of the packages visually. So what Synchro does best is, once I do have those packages created, it actually calculates the start date and end date of each IWP automatically based on the sequence set, and you will be able to visualize that sequence. This is what Synchro is best at. CSIM is not a scheduling tool. Synchro is a scheduling tool. The difference between Synchro and P6 is raw data. You don't have any 3D model integration. Whereas, so think about Synchro as P6 plus the visual aspect, where you are really able to see things. Plus, you have also the analysis that you can do at the crane level. So each IWP can bring the crane movements and show all that analysis. I do have 1 more minute. I'll try to answer what questions. Grace Rosen, does it connect to EP contractor? Yes, yeah, engineering procurement, definitely. We do have integration with the EP. Let me go to the chat now. Okay. Okay, do you want, okay, I don't want to meet today, no. How does the CWPs and IWP relate to the, great question. So as a best practice, as the AWP best practice, the level 3 schedule in P6 should, or any other scheduling tool, should have a reference to the CWPs. Now, if that contractor is not implementing the best practice, we still have the option of linking the CWPs or the IWPs with their activity, with their activities. So we bring in the schedule into the work package server, and we are able to assign for that CWP or IWP to which activity it belongs in the WBS. And this is how we are ultimately able to bring back the IWPs inside the WBS. Do you resource load, cost load the IWPs on the CPM schedule? Yes, we do that. From go date, what's the time to implement on a typical industrial project, say a $500 million project? So typically we do a workshop, to make sure that all the data requirements from the 3D models and the integrations and the template that should be exchanged. So 1 month is a typical, for a $500 million project, 1 month is the period required to provide the implementation or kick off the implementation and make sure that all these systems are being connected together. What mobile track and trace tool do you use? Android-based tablets and passive array. So Christian, we do have mobile device applications. It's Apple product, so it's OS, not Android. Apple Pro, and and for the passive RFID, we do have a partnership, or we do collaborate and have tested that with Atlas RFID. So we've done that in previous projects, and we integrated with their platform to provide that type of analysis. What about electrical and instrument? Yes, so one of the great thing about CSIM is that in the event that the engineering didn't model those components, whether instruments or electrical or cables, we do have a capability of packaging non-graphical components. And the whole idea behind CSIM is that we should provide all the project scope. So if I go here to the component tree, this is the project scope, and it's built not solely from the 3D models, but also from data that are coming simply from spreadsheets. So you see here the instrumentation, I don't have a checkbox next to it simply because the instrumentations weren't modeled in the 3D model, or the engineering didn't provide the graphical representation for them. However, in CSIM, we make sure that, because ultimately you would like to make sure that all your project is being constructed, and to follow on that, you need to build your project scope, whether that is being modeled or not modeled. And you can see here, those instruments are not modeled. However, I'm still able to create packages for them by simply right-click, new AWP, and then you can select that this is an instrumentation. And rather than selecting them from the 3D model, you get to select them from the component tree. And notice the great thing, it provides a visibility for the workface planner that, hey, pay attention, those are already available in another pack, whereas those are still not packaged. So he can simply select some of the tags within that system and add them to the package, and you can see that the work steps along the man hours will be automatically calculated. Okay, let's go back to the chat window. Okay, I'll set a Zoom meeting tomorrow. Okay, so back to P6 is always the requirement from companies, so PM will not. Okay, this tool can be integrated with ONS tool? Yes, yeah. I totally agree, Sabrine. Many of P6 is a contractual requirement, definitely. And but believe me, the way things are moving, we do have one owner that is now mandating Synchro. Because imagine you have a tool that has the same capability of P6, but also has the graphical validation with the 3D model capability. So as an owner, I would definitely recommend Synchro, but I totally understand that because the contracts are so old, P6 is a requirement. But yes, we are able to integrate with P6, Microsoft Project, any project management application. The deliverable are connecting to AWP and AWP. Which data management tool will be connected to? It depends. So it depends on the data management application that the contractor is using. Is he using ProjectWise for document management? Is he using another tool? We have our own document management, which is inside the work package server. We've integrated with so many other applications for that purpose, like doc control and many other applications. Again, the great thing about DCW, even if we haven't done an integration with that particular product, having a lab that is willing to put that investment is a great thing to be able to integrate with other products. 1 month to set up and get us up for how many people deployed at EP, and how does it connect to procurement and engineering? So I would say we would need $500 million project, one to two person. In our current project, we have I would say between 500 and 700 million dollar project. We have only one person sitting at the EP side. Now at site, it's a different story. Now, how do we integrate with the other, the engineering and procurement? It can be a simple pull out and pull in. So we take an extract with a specific template. We provide you an Excel file. You export that data from the smart plant construction or sorry, SPM, smart plant material, or any other tool that you're using for the material management. It can be as simple as a pull, an export from that application in a special format that we agree on, and then we pull that information inside the work package server. The work package server, it's an extremely flexible application. The user, it's a cloud-based application. You go to bulk import, and based on that template that we have set, the user will simply come here and let's say this is the material allocation coming from SPEM. You would simply upload that information. If we can take it to the next level, if you are willing to invest more, and we can have a direct link with your other application so that it wouldn't be a manual process where it's an export and an import. It can be through the API at the database level.
So I think this has been great in terms of the interaction. We've gotten a ton of questions from the audience, and you've done a spectacular job of answering them all. I just want to thank the presenters from Digital Construction Works. I think they gave a lot of great information, and based on the Q&A, lots of interest in the audience. If you have any questions, please reach out to either Eric or Abdel, and they will be able to give you more information. But I want to thank both our presenters today. I think they did a great job, and look forward to hearing more in the future.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Thank you, everyone, for attending the session.
Thanks, everyone. Yes.
Thanks so much. And please join us at the AWP Advanced Work Packaging Community of Practice on LinkedIn. We'll post the recording there, and we'll send a copy to everyone's inbox as well. So thanks for attending, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye now.